Steve again with a question. Would you like to spend a few hours with Keith Richards? Uh, I think there's no middle ground on that question, on that answer, rather. Um, I'm just going through this audiobook. As I've mentioned before, I actually drive a couple of hours every day, so I go through audiobooks. And this book by Keith Richards and another guy, helping write it, James Fox. It's called Life. It's a memoir of Keith Richards and the Rolling Stones and all the shenanigans in between. But it's a great look into the life of a man who really lived life on his terms. That's the biggest thing I admire about Keith Richards, probably. He seems to have this deep honesty about him. I mean, I don't admire him for his lifestyle. I wouldn't want to live his lifestyle. It seems like a suicide trajectory. He's managed to survive it somehow, but I don't think many people would. And he probably had a lot of narrow misses. But my goodness, it's an insight into a man, a genius, really. I mean, he doesn't admit it at all, of course. Extremely hard worker. A very romantic man in a way. I mean, the way he loves his music. It's kind of hard to describe until you listen to it. And he's also a very good reader. He reads his own ebook, a lot of it, or his memoir book, quite a bit. And he's very dramatic. And the way he explains certain things that he loves, he just puts the emphasis into it. I can feel when he describes the beauty of a woman, or a certain guitar, or the way he describes, especially the way he describes music that he loves. It's very simple words, but it's almost the way he says it. This man is in love with so much. I mean, I kind of admire the guy, even though, he was admittedly a junkie for many years. And I've never done any drugs at all, except a little bit of alcohol, caffeine, if that's drug. Very little of that, too. But, I mean, his drug use was certainly part of the times. I mean, a rock and roll guy in the 60s. I mean, it's like, I saw Mick Jagger in an interview one time, and somebody asked him, "You used to smoke, didn't you?" And his answer was, "Well, who didn't in those days? Of course he smoked." And of course they did drugs. I mean, certainly wasn't illegal even in the early days when they started back in the early 60s. It was what all the avant-garde did. It was like the latest, diet craze or something. And but not to defend it at all. I mean, the guy did live in many ways a wretched life, but a hard-working life. I mean, the hours they put in and the dedication. Like, it was just amazing how in love somebody can be for something. He describes in there his first guitar. That was more important to him than girls even. He slept with the guitar. And every waking moment was spent trying to do something with that guitar. I mean, it wasn't just a quick course down at the Long and McQuaid and then I'm a guitar player. This guy was, and never stopped wanting to try to take it apart and what it could do. When he learned as much as he could, he wanted to find out how he could detune it and open tuning and take some strings off and play something different. And everywhere he was, when he'd meet these artists, it's like, how do you do what you do, man? And he'd learn it. Really inspiring. I think it's really inspiring for those of us who wish for a better quality of life. I mean, we get what we live for and we live in a way, right? What we embed and imbue ourselves in. I mean, so often we wonder why we think all these shit thoughts that we have, and yet if we really examined our mind, That's the stuff we're letting to float by and grab onto, right? You know, with swimming shit, we're gonna stink. Um, so I mean, he was swimming in music, and even when he was on drugs, he was swimming in music. Even when he was asleep, he was talking about one song. I forget which one it was. He wrote it in his sleep. And of course, here's a man who allegedly only slept 2 nights a week, because he was just so wound up on speed and everything all the time. Just amazing. It's an amazing story of so many things, of human survival, of just unbridled craziness, all mixed up with genius and hard work and intensity, all wrapped up in one. It's just, and timing and all that. Just absolutely amazing and true to what he loved all the way through. Couldn't give a damn about money, really, for the most part, but rolled in it anyways. I don't know. I think it's a good example. We can take lessons from all kinds of people, but I think Keith Richards is an example of a guy who just lived life. You know, wasn't dealt any favors, really. I mean, the guy grew up in the frickin' gutter, pretty much. I mean, it was some hellhole called Dartmouth, England, or something, and it was just violence galore, like the way they got beat up, and you know, on the way home from school, he had to take different routes. He didn't get the shit kicked out of him by bullies, and I mean, it was rough and tumble at the other side of the tracks, London, back in the late 50s. I mean, this was after the war. He'd be walking home, and there was rubble everywhere from the war still and everything. I mean, this is how he grew up, but just had a heart, a love for something, and then all kinds of other frailties. But it seemed like because of that love for something central, core, which was that music, all this other shit going on, like snorting coke and everything, didn't stop him. It didn't stop him, because through it all, he somehow pulled through, I guess, because of that love for the music. And from listening to it, you can see that he was you know, he especially was like the heart of the Rolling Stones, um, right there. Yeah, it's a great great little read if you have an interest in just something different. So I try something different, not just some sort of a stiff shirt, you know, telling you how, a life coach telling you how it is. This guy broke pretty damn near every rule there is, and end up in jail many times, you know. And just, it's a funny story. It's a hilarious story. It's an amazing story. It's an intriguing story. It's all of them wrapped up in one. Just the life and times of Keith Richards. Man, oh man. I recommend it if you want to try something different. Steve here again with some comments on how the life and times of Keith Richards can improve the quality of your life experience. Great chatting. Chat again soon.